Good evening, Dr. Smith, members of the Board of Education, and my fellow students. My name is Brian Kramer, and I'm a senior at Northwood High School and the executive director of the Association for the Advancement of Maryland Public Schools, which is a student-led advocacy group dedicated to fighting inequality in education throughout the state. As an advocate fighting against artificial barriers in education, it would be irresponsible of me not to support the changes in the priority of diversity under policy FAA. My testimony today centers not around the vast sea of statistics that support diverse schools, but around my personal experiences with adversity caused by a lack of diversity. I was born 17 years ago in a town in southern Maryland called Waldorf. Now, southern Maryland has come to define me, from my strange accent to my love for a great barbecue. But there wasn't much else in Waldorf. There were no great jobs for my parents, and there was no opportunities for me to advance personally. We suffered several financial setbacks, which led to our family becoming impoverished and eventually losing everything and becoming homeless. Weeks upon weeks of shelters and struggle later, and we were told about a town called Hope, or in this case, a county named Montgomery. The schools were well funded, there were jobs, and the parks were lovely. But as a middle schooler, I hadn't thought about why the schools and opportunities weren't as great as they were elsewhere. I just assumed that's how the world worked. But as I matured and learned more about what led to my homelessness and poverty, I came to realize that this debate about equitable school districts is at the center of my life experiences. The middle and elementary schools I attended were the polar opposite of diverse. The lines in our town were drawn so that every school I attended contained every impoverished student in the area, and the other schools in the area were drawn to contain the wealthier, more well-off students. And as a result, they were given more resources and they were given more opportunities. And simply because of where I lived, I was put at an immediate disadvantage. Now, Northwood High School is the contrast of that reality. It's a melting pot of hundreds of different perspectives, ranging from language to core beliefs and values. And the 4 years I've spent at Northwood have been decades worth of knowledge that's made me a better student and a better person. The high school diploma I'll receive in June has many requirements set by this state, but none of those core requirements has taught me nearly as much as learning in a diverse environment has. It's criminal to rob any student of that same opportunity. Diversity is a strength in our schools, not a detriment. Ask any student at Northwood or at any school like ours, and they'll tell you the exact same thing and about how diversity is important in our education. If you still disagree with this change in policy, I implore you to put yourself in the shoes of any student that had to endure the same conditions that I did. I thank you all for giving me the time to speak here today, and I urge every board member to support these vital changes to policy FAA. And thank you specifically to Jill Ortman-Faust for continuing this fight on behalf of us students.
Thank you, Mr. Kramer. As well as thank you for your previous testimony to this board and your continued involvement at Northwood and countywide. Celine. Good.
Good evening, Dr. Smith, members of the Board of Education, and my fellow students. My name is Selena Penting, and I'm a junior at Northwood High School. I am a member of the Northwoods Palms team. I'm the president of my class and the French Honor Society. I'm a National Honor Society member, and I'm the operations director for the Association for the Advancement of Maryland Public Schools. I know, it's a mouthful, but I wouldn't have it any other way. Being so involved in my community has been nothing but a plus. I have been able to meet many students of different backgrounds, cultures, and ethnicities. I have met students from Ecuador, Senegal, Haiti, Ethiopia, Mexico, China, and many more who chose to come to this country to fulfill their dreams and aspirations. The American dream is still deeply alive in these students, and our schools should be organized to allow them to achieve their highest potential. That is why anything less than the full support of the changes being proposed to policy FAA would be a disservice to all students within our school system. I'm not just talking about the students gathered here today. I'm talking about my brother, Jaden, who just turned 11 this weekend. When he enters high school, he deserves the same opportunities that I have. There are thousands of students out there just like him, and they all deserve to grow up in a diverse environment. The studies are clear. Diversity is not a detriment to our schools. According to Mother Jones, the most recent data from the federal government confirmed that there is no negative impact on test scores, as well as some studies confirming that the test scores of all students of backgrounds actually increased. Test scores are often the statistic brought up to show the quality of our schools. While lower test scores may be the go-to defense of the status quo, The facts prove this to be bearless and incorrect. Diverse schools teach us some of the most important skills that cannot be found on a Scantron or the SATs, such as acceptance of other ideas and functioning in an ever-diversifying society. The world is filled with people who don't look like you and who don't look like me, but that's what makes it so interesting. That's what makes it so great. Your schools help pave the way for future leaders who need to know how to interact with others in a way that cannot be taught in a textbook. By passing a new revision to policy FAA, this county can ensure that those skills can be taught to every student within our schools. Thank you for not only giving me the time to testify here today, but to also voice my opinion on how you can help me and my fellow students. I urge every board member to support the policy changes to FAA.
Thank you, Ms. Apentang. Our next speaker, Evan Moore.
Good evening, Dr. Smith, members of the Board of Education, and my fellow students. My name is Evan Moore, and I am a senior attending Northwood High School, and I have a few quick observations and opinions to share. Life in general is not something that can be described or explained with a math equation, and yet often this is the case. So my test scores don't define the whole of who I am, nor do they define my friends, and yet they're often used to judge the quality of the schools we attend. And at Northwood, the education we receive is not bolstered by how big our SAT or ACT scores are, but because of the cultural depth of the environment that we experience every day. And when I look down the hallways of my school, I don't see test scores floating above people's heads like video game characters. I see hundreds of different cultures, perspectives, languages spoken, perspectives that embody my community. So our education cannot be calculated into a spreadsheet or into a single number. It's the weeks, months, and years that we spend developing our identities and beliefs. And they can't be squashed down and quantified by a formula the way they are when test scores are used in this way. So being educated in a diverse environment provides a more valuable education to me, my peers, than an SAT review book, if you see what I mean. And that's why I'm here today to speak in favor of the changes to policy FAA, because I believe that diversity creates a much better learning environment. And so I thank you for allowing me to speak today, and I hope that every board member will realize the same and vote for the policy changes to FAA. Thank you.
Good evening, members of the board, Superintendent Smith. My name is Emmet Kasai, and I am a junior at Richard Montgomery High School. I come here today on behalf of MCRSGA and my peers in full support of policy FAA-RA. Our county prides itself on its diversity, representing students from so many different nations. Some of our schools are very representative of the diversity in our county, both ethnically and socioeconomically, but a lot of our schools don't. There are schools like Walt Whitman High School, which have a Hispanic population that equals to less than 9% of its total population, and schools like Wheaton High School, which has an Asian population that amounts to less than 13% of its total population. The lack of diversity in these schools is especially detrimental to the students, as it strips them away from so many opportunities of growth that they would otherwise have. During my family's first years in America, I was enrolled in kindergarten at Bell Elementary School, a minority-majority school. I had come from Eritrea, a small country right next to Ethiopia, and I knew very little English. Because of how diverse Bell was, I was quickly able to form friendships with students from all over the world. I learned a tolerance for others, and seeing how open my friends were about their cultures helped me embrace mine even more. And while Bell's diversity helped me meet people from different backgrounds, it also helped me form lifelong, lasting friendships with those whom I shared qualities with. I met Leah, an Ethiopian girl, who I'm good friends with to this day. Our similar backgrounds brought us together, and our families as well, and helped me realize that I wasn't the only one of me out there. Diversity allows students to recognize different backgrounds and be sensitive to different cultures. But just as importantly, it creates communities of what we know, which is what it did for me. With increased diversity comes tolerance, inclusivity, and acceptance. Each student deserves a chance at that, especially in a county with so much opportunity for it. Therefore, I urge all of you members of the board to vote for policy FAA. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Nick Asante.
Good evening, Dr. Smith, members of the Board of Education. My name is Nick Asante, and I'm a sophomore at Richard Montgomery High School. Now, tonight, I'd like to share with you my experiences with diversity, or a lack thereof, during my time in MCPS. In middle school, I was part of the math science program at Roberto Clemente. I remember walking into my computer science class on the first day of school, eager to start learning how to code. After the bell had rung, the guy next to me leaned over and whispered, "Are you sure you're in the right place?" At first, I was baffled by that comment. Yeah, I was in the right place. My schedule said so. Why would he ask me that? But then, I looked around the classroom and I realized why he had asked me that. I was the only African American in that room. In fact, I later found out that I was one of only 2 African Americans in the entire 50-person program. But at that moment, I did begin to question if I was in the right place. Now, flash forward a couple of years, and it's my 8th grade year. By that time, I had figured out that math was my favorite class and that computer science was probably the area of study I wanted to pursue in college. And so when applying to high school magnet programs, naturally, I applied to the science, math, and computer science program at Poolesville, and I got into that program. However, I declined that acceptance. Now, this was for a multitude of reasons, but the main reason I rejected that program that seemed so perfectly suited for my interest was the fact that out of the 1,183 students at Poolesville, about only 65 of them were black. Now, I know many people ask themselves if the racial makeup of a school is a valid reason for me to turn down a program that seems like it's perfectly made for me. Well, it was, because I didn't want to be in an educational environment where I stood out because of my race as opposed to my intellectual ideas and my capabilities. But I didn't want to go to a school where I would constantly question whether or not I was in the right place. Studies show that diversity leads to individuality without isolation, that diversity promotes self-growth and open-mindedness. And when you don't experience diversity, you start to limit yourself. You start to believe that the situation and that the environment that you're currently in is the place where you should be for the rest of your life. You start to think that you shouldn't step out of those boundaries and that people who are different are weird and are crazy and are wrong and are criminals and are terrorists and are dangerous. And when you do find yourself placed in situations with people who aren't like you, situations that you're not used to, you start to ask yourself whether or not you're in that right place. Board members, I urge you to vote in favor of the amendments to policy FAA. In a world full of bigotry, prejudice, and ignorance, it is vital that our students are taught the importance of accepting the differences of others. It is vital that the students are taught that it is okay to be different, and that it is vital that students are taught not to make assumptions based off those differences, so that when they are placed in a situation where they do stand out, they can say to themselves, yes, I am in the right place.
Thank you, sir. Adiba?
Good evening. My name is Adiba Chowdhury, and I am a 16-year-old South Asian Muslim student at Montgomery Blair High School. I attended Eastern Middle School's Humanities program. The majority of the students in my classes were white or Asian. In my year, the program had 3 black students and 4 South Asian students. When I hit high school, I was no longer in any program, and I was suddenly surrounded with a diverse mix of students who had backgrounds from everywhere and lived in my area. Since then, I've met some of my closest friends, and my classes have been incredibly diverse. I bring this up because I've personally reaped the benefits of diversity throughout my time at Blair, and I believe that other students deserve the chance to benefit too. I've had eye-opening conversations with students at Blair Interracial Dialogue Week, and I've been able to break down some of my own stereotypes simply by sitting in AP government. I believe that this, more than any other aspect of my education, has changed my life, and we are obligated to build that environment for students across the county. We cannot waste this opportunity to foster a generation of students that would drive change, simply by ensuring that we take diversity into account when we draw school boundaries. In wasting it, we would let down students who want kids in their neighborhood to play with them at recess. And we would let down students like my friends who thought that Asian students are simply stuck studying all the time. I will admit that tonight might have been the prime opportunity to study for tomorrow's math test. But I know that what happens regarding the FAA policy might change the future of both the next South Asian Muslim girl to join the Blair community and her peers as well. I hope we make the right decision. Thank you.
Thank you, Adiba. Giovanni.
Good evening, members of the board and my fellow peers. My name is Giovanni Gutierrez, and I am a senior at Rockville High School. I am here today on behalf of MCR-SGA in full support of what I believe the student community in Montgomery County could greatly benefit from, the FAA Long-Range Educational Facilities Planning Bill. Students would have more educational opportunities, thus enhancing our county's success and growth. Our students should be able to academically thrive, no matter what their race or socioeconomic status is. No school should be overwhelmed with poverty, while another one is filled with wealth. We have ignored diversity in the schools numerous times, but now is the time to face the issues that have held our county down for so long. Every student in our county deserves to equally experience diversity within their schools. I have experienced the beauty of diversity. Montgomery County has given me the opportunity to meet people of different ethnicities and cultures. When I moved to the United States 5 years ago, I was delighted and fascinated by the diversity that this county gave to me. In my country of birth, Peru, there was one common culture that was accepted and endorsed, while any others were put down. However, as soon as I moved into Montgomery County, I noticed the different cultures that this county offered me. Some were completely new to me, and others I had only heard of. I am thankful for being a Montgomery County resident. However, I am extremely ambitious, and I want more. We want more. We, your students, want equity. Diversity must stand out in our county. Our cultures must grow together as one, not separated. I am a believer of us. I believe that together, we will break the walls that have separated us throughout history, and I am sure you, members of the board, will help us accomplish this. Thank you for your time.